Hey, what's up? This is Matty Mullins from the band Memphis Mayfire, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with a brand new episode. This week in the guest host chair, I've got returning guest, Peter Soros of Fairweather and Be Well. Peter, say hello.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me back, man.
Yes, it's great to have you here. We have not spoken in a long time. It's been over a year, I think.
Yeah, how's this happened?
Yes, it's been since Northeast Scene Days. Can you believe it? I can't believe it.
I mean, you guys are getting pretty big, man. It's pretty cool.
I am happy about it, and I hope it continues to grow. And Peter, it's great to have you here. You know, you've got a lot going on this year. Fairweather just put out a new EP, Deluge. You know, that was only a conversation last time we spoke. Be Well just put out a new EP. There's a lot going on, and we're going to jump into all that. But today, on the show, our interview subject is Chris McLean of Stretch Armstrong. Now, many of you are aware, Stretch Armstrong is re-releasing the Rituals of Life LP, the classic LP on Iodine Recordings. That reissue is coming out September 23rd. Keep an eye out for that. Well, I mean, all the vinyls sold out. It sold out like in a day, but it's going to be remastered. You're going to want to hear it, and it's a great record. It's a great record. We talked to Chris about that. We talk about their experience on Solid State. We talk about the reunions. We talk about Furnace Fest. We cover it all. You're going to love the conversation, and that's coming up momentarily. But first, here's how you can support us, The New Scene. The two important things right now are shirts. You're going to want to buy a shirt, and you're going to want to wear it to Furnace Fest, right, Pete? We want them to wear New Scene shirts to Furnace Fest.
You need to be able to spot them in the crowd, for sure.
Yes. And if you wear a New Scene shirt to Furnace Fest, I will stop you and say, nice shirt, and then walk away.
Hey,
how about that?
And I'll do it too.
Yeah, so you'll have that from me and from Pete. I can't think of a better reason. The shirts are up at Death Wish Inc. We've got t-shirts. We've got a long sleeve option. They're great. Pick one up. And Apple Podcast reviews. I want to get us over 100. We're getting closer. Thanks to everybody who has submitted a review. If you write a nice 5-star review, I'll read it on the air. And please support Iodine Recordings. A version online just posted a interview with Chuck Young and Dave Gorman from Orange Island. They've got an LP re-release of One Night Stay. That's coming out September 30th. I'm looking forward to that. And they've got a new single up, Holy Bibles and Stained Glass Hotel Windows. Check out the band if you haven't yet. Dave is going to be on this show soon enough, so keep an ear out for that as well. I'm looking forward to having that conversation. So let's talk about what we're listening to. Now, I'm going to start here. There is some big news. There's some very big music news happening right now. Botch has released their first song in 20 years. It's called When. I'm like saying when instead of one.
Well, you're shocked by the first new song in 20 years, so it's understandable.
Botch has a new song called 122. It's their first song in 20 years. Have you heard this, Peter?
No, I saw that it was out. It's out, right? I saw that it was out, but I haven't listened to it.
It came out today.
Okay. Yeah, no, I want to hear what it sounds like because 20 years can do a lot,
Yeah, I am happy to report that it's very good. Botch is a very important band to me. I have to admit, I had all kinds of emotions. I'm nuts. I was like, I'm going to listen to it. I'm not going to listen to it. I want them to reunite. I don't want them to reunite.
Right.
I went back and forth, so I just sat down, listened to the song with nice headphones and everything, listened to it a couple times. It's great. So I read a post from Brian Cook, and he went into a long explanation of how the song came about, and it was a really good post, and it doesn't look like they're necessarily going to reunite.
I like that.
Yeah, same here. I like that they're keeping it mysterious and not necessarily jumping to a reuniting tour and all that stuff, because that's what most bands do, and I like that Botch is doing things a little different. They didn't say they're ruling it out completely, but they said the song is what we get for right now because it's going to be part of the re-release of We Are the Romans on Sargent House. I'm happy to report that the song is good. And yeah, it's great.
Let me ask you, did you see Botch back in the day?
Yes, I saw them in 1999. They played the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia with Dillinger Escape Plan and other bands. I really don't remember most of the set. I only remember a very small piece of it, but I wish I had seen them more times, but I'm just happy I was at that show and that I remember a small portion of it. And, I think there's like a VHS upload of it on YouTube that I revisit periodically. Did you see them back in the day?
I think I saw them within the same kind of bands that you were just saying, and it might even been maybe on the same tour when all that, like, you're just pummeled with noise from a show like that.
Yeah.
From a lot of those bands at that time. And I don't want to sound like a person who's trying to pretend I saw a band when I didn't, but I saw a lot of shows and a lot of bands for the first time live before I even heard about them. So I think that I saw them in DC or in the suburbs of DC around the same time. So that would make sense.
Yeah. And I know what you're saying. Like, there's so many bands that I saw that I probably have no idea about because I was going to so many shows and I didn't necessarily like pick up the CD every time. So you never know.
That's how I saw Converge for the first time, and a few bands like that. They were just at a show that I was already going to. And it made me, after the fact, discover Arms for Sleep. I mean, These Arms Are Snakes.
Yes.
Because of the members of, and knowing that Botch was a big band around that time that I was coming up. So that's cool. I love These Arms Are Snakes. So.
Oh, yeah, they're great. They're great. What are you listening to lately, Pete? Lay it on us.
It's hard for me to find new music, man. And when you said that, I got a little worried, like I was going to have to pretend that I listened to something. But I remembered that Cloak Dagger came out with a new EP, and they're playing the Fairweather show coming up. But they have a new EP called Temp Life. They're a band from Richmond, and it's phenomenal. They're a very kind of punk-sounding hardcore band that's got a kind of a cool Black Flag, and there's melody in there, but it's still real raw sounding. The production is really cool, and I think this is the best stuff they've done. So I've just been listening to it a ton. That's
awesome. Yeah, I've definitely heard that name many times before. I got to check that out. And what classics are you listening to?
Oh, the classics, man. I hate to say it, but I listen to the same old records a lot. I still listen to Into Another Ignaris a lot, and Bringing It Down, Judge. I was just going to say I listen to those when I want to I got to listen to some music. But left to my own devices, a lot of times I'll listen to older Townes Van Zandt stuff just because it's kind of puts me in a more mellow mood. But if I want to go to a loud record on the way home from work or something, I usually go to Into Another or Judge. Or Lifetime. I was listening to Hello Bastards the other day, really loud.
Oh, that's a classic. Yeah, I haven't heard. I'll be honest here. I'm really not up on the classics. I have not heard a full Into Another record or a full Judge record before. How about that?
Well, there's probably plenty of people who feel the same way. Into Another is hotly contested within my friend group. You're either a super fan or you can't stand them. and I'm on the other side. I saw them. I was a big Underdog fan when I was growing up, and then they formed Into Another, and I kind of was confused by the whole situation because it was like Dungeons and Dragons heavy metal. But I love Richie's singing, and the music was just phenomenal and different. And they played these hardcore shows. They never really fit in. And I think that was their, the hardest thing for a band is when you don't really fit in. You're either too heavy to be at the rock show or too light to be at the metal show or the hardcore show. And they've always stuck with me as a band that kind of made me think that in hardcore, you could kind of do whatever you wanted and you were still going to be accepted at a time when you could still pull that off. I don't know about now, but.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they came about in that it was the more alternative era. I think you had Quicksand, you had a lot of post-hardcore stuff going on, but Into Another. Now I've seen Into Another. Okay. I don't really remember the show because I was pretty blasted at the show.
Yeah.
That was the story of my life for a long time.
Uh-huh.
But I remember it being almost like a more classic rock meets post-hardcore type thing.
Exactly. And I think that if you weren't there when they started playing only hardcore shows, it doesn't really compute the same way.
Yeah.
And not that I know something people don't know, but it was this weird era of hardcore where you could have 5 different bands that all sounded completely different and everybody would just accept them all as hardcore bands. Like there was a time when Into Another would play with Sick of It All or Outspoken and Ashes and all these bands in DC that all sounded drastically different, but people would it was still the same vibe. And once I got older and I started playing in bands and touring, the scene kind of splintered off into all these subgenres where there wasn't really a outside of the box band. And my band Fairweather ended up being that weird band on the tour. Like we were either a little too noisy for some tours or we were too melodic for other tours. And Into Another's still at it. They're still playing. They're phenomenal musicians and I will sing their praises till the day I die.
Absolutely. So there you go. You've got some new recommendations. You've got some old recommendations. I've got some homework to do, so I'm going to dive in. But listen, check back in with me and Peter in segment 3. We're going to catch up with him. He's got a lot of new music out there. I want to see how he's doing. But right now, we are going to speak to Chris McClain of Stretch Armstrong. Enjoy. All right. We are here now with Chris McClain. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here, Chris. You've done a lot over the years. Stretch Armstrong has done a lot. We have another exciting gig coming up at Furnace Fest this year. We've got a Rituals of Life repress coming up, and we're going to cover all of that. But first, let me ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I hope you are. It seems to be a good question to ask people these days.
Yeah, because you never know what's going to happen these days from one day to the next.
No, man. Just a lot of craziness going on. So, no, I'm good. My family's good. I'm healthy. Feeling good. Looking great. You can't see that over the audio here, but no, man.
Well, I hope to see that in September.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah, no, I'm feeling good. Thank you.
What's your family structure? You got a wife? How many kids?
Yeah, I have my wife. We've been married a little over or right at 25 years. I have a daughter who's 22 and she's 21. I'm sorry. I always try to age her up. And then my boy will actually be 16 next week and she's at the university. He's in high school. My wife teaches school and I work for AEG here in the Carolinas covering both the Carolinas and Georgia.
Right. Yeah. We were talking a little bit before we recorded. You used to teach as well, right? I remember someone telling me that like way back in the late 90s.
Yeah, man, that's correct. I graduated college in 95. And after the summer, I got my first teaching job and I taught high school for 8 years. And then in 2003, I got a phone call from Chad Gilbert from Newfound Glory. And they were going out on the Honda Civic Tour with Good Charlotte and a revolving cast of openers. And we got asked to do like the last leg of the tour. And so I talked to my wife and we had been playing as a part-time weekend warrior band for a long time. And we got asked to do that tour. And we said, we're going to give it a go. We're going to try to do this thing full time, see where it goes. And it was great. It was a great experience for sure.
Okay. So you said that this tour was in 2003?
Yeah. 2003 Honda Civic Tour.
So you're telling me up until 2003, Stretch Armstrong was just still a weekend warrior band?
Yeah. People always thought we were full time because, we would fly to Mexico and do a weekend. We'd fly to Puerto Rico and do a weekend. We'd fly to California. Or over the summer, we'd do 30 states in 35 days or something. We would just go hard. Summer, Christmas break, whenever we could go, we would go. And people, for a long time, people thought we were a full-time band. And it wasn't until 2003 that we started really making a go of it.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I am one of those people who's surprised to hear that because I saw you guys a lot, so I just figured you were always out there doing it.
Yeah, no, yeah, we did. I mean, we would, like I remember one Christmas break. I think we left South Carolina, and I think we played like Omaha, Nebraska, somewhere in Kansas City, somewhere in Chicago, and that was the weekend. Then we'd drive home, go back to work. And then a little bit later, Jamie from Hatebreed would ask us to do, or us among other bands, to do those Stillborn Fests where he would do right after Christmas. He would do like 5 shows in the Northeast. So we would do Christmas at home, and then literally Christmas night, after everything had died down, we would drive to Philly, which is usually kicked off in Philly on the 26th. And then we would do like 26 through 30 in the Northeast with, he was usually 5 or 6 bands. So we played a lot, but we weren't a full-time band at that point.
Well, you managed to accomplish so much with not actually technically being a full-time band.
Yeah, we certainly tried, for sure. We really did.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So this show in 2003, this tour in 2003, the Honda Civic tour, you said Good Charlotte was on it. You said Newfound Glory was on it.
It was a co-bill with Newfound and Good Charlotte. Newfound was supporting, I want to say it was Sticks and Stones. And then Good Charlotte was the album, I'm spacing, with Lifetime, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and the Anthems. Big album. I'm totally spacing on the name of the album. They were supporting the album. And then, so they were rotating headlining positions. And then MXPX did a month in the second slot. Less Than Jake did another month in the second slot. And then they were rotating the openers in like 3-week intervals. So we got 3 weeks and we were the last leg of the tour, which was rad because we played all these great cities throughout the Southeast. And then we ended at Red Rocks. We got to play Red Rocks, Colorado, which was just, obviously we had no business being there, but we were on the tour. And so that was one of those just check it off the list types of things. It was super cool to be a part of.
That is so awesome.
Dope. So cool.
And now, if someone would have told me before right now that Stretch Armstrong had played Red Rocks, I might not have believed it, but I'm so happy that you did.
I am too. It was so cool. And what's funny, the company that I work for now, our Denver office just, runs shows through there all the time. So, I had only heard of Red Rocks, when we were leading up to playing it. Of course, I'd seen the YouTube video of them playing at Red Rocks way back when, Under a Blood Red Sky. But just seeing that on the itinerary, and Newfound and Good Charlotte were selling out these places. So Red Rocks was sold out. Obviously, the crowd didn't really have any idea who we were. But nonetheless, we were playing about an hour after doors each night. So it was the rooms were full. And I remember specifically that night, Red Rocks was well beyond what we thought, how full it would be for the opening slot. It was great, man. Never forget it. It was really great. I was just very gracious of Good Charlotte, Newfound Glory to take out some smaller bands because, everybody was in buses, truck, semis was the tour. And, we're in a van and trailer rolling up each day. Like, God, here come these guys again. But no, everybody was just super cool. For a hardcore band, getting to play arenas, Red Rocks, bigger theaters. It was great, man. It was something really cool to be a part of.
That's amazing. Did you see a big jump in interest in Stretch Armstrong after that tour? Was quitting the teaching job worth it?
Well, yeah, I think we did. We would sell a lot of T-shirts on those tours, but, those fans were there for Newfound and for Good Charlotte. So we were just kind of like the first hurdle in between them and what they wanted to see. But no, it was good. As far as, you're trying to make a career of it, that was certainly a great jumping off point, for sure. So it was great to be a part of it. Were we all that impactful, or was that tour very impactful as far as our career went? I don't remember we saw any sort of a huge jump in anything. As I recall, and you'll have to correct me here, edit this out, in 2003, I don't think anybody in the band had a cell phone. Maybe we had a cell phone or two. So I'm only assuming the internet was obviously, alive and kicking at that point. But there was no, social media that I was aware of that we could use as a tool to further promote the band. So we were just trying to do what we did live, trying to win them over, hang out at the merch table, sell shirts, sell albums, and just, do as well as we could. it was awesome to be a part of. What it really did for the career of the band, yeah, I don't know.
What adjustments did you have to make? I mean, you had this teaching job and you're doing the band whenever you have off. So how did things change once you quit that and started technically full time with the band?
Well, we were broke. And at the time, I was the only guy in the band. So at that time, my daughter was 3. And I told my wife, I said, hey, I think we're going to try this full time. And she's like, oh, as in like no steady income. And I was like, yeah, but I think we can do it. I think we're going to be okay. And so we had to stay out on the road longer to make any real money, go to Europe 2 or 3 times a year. And you had to stay longer because you had to cover the flights. So we just ended up being gone longer. And I was the only one at the time, like I said, that had a child. Some of the other guys were married, but I was the only one that had a baby. So when I would get home from tour, most of those guys didn't have to work. So we were doing well enough that when we weren't on tour, they weren't having to work, but I was having to work just because there were 3 of us at the house, instead of just me and my wife or me and a girlfriend. And I'm not diminishing any, I'm not taking anything away from what they were doing because it's all relative. But for me, I was having to work. So there was a couple clubs I was working at. I picked up a food delivering job, I never mind hustling. I never mind working. And I was doing shows on the side. So I had been doing shows on my own, trading shows for bands. And I was kind of doing that more and more. And I was getting pretty good at it. And so I was trying to supplement my income with food delivery, Stretch Armstrong, doing shows on the side, and working the door at a club in town.
Yeah, so just doing whatever you got to do to make ends meet.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah, so I know the band continued on for another couple years. I know we had a final record, but I'm going to pull Quentin Tarantino here and bring us back now to the beginning. So tell us about the beginning of the band, what you were into, and what you were listening to that inspired the band.
Wow. Okay. So the band actually started in March of 1993. I was not in the band. I was in college. David, Scott, and John were all in the band. And there was a guy, Matt McCarty, who played bass and sang. And he actually put the band together. And we're still friends with him, still talk to him. Not as frequently as we'd like, but still keep in touch with him today. So they started, and in those days, those guys were real influenced. John and Matt kind of came from a metal background, and Scott and David came from more of a punk and hardcore background. But I think they all kind of, in those days, it was a bit of the rap rock thing was happening.
Yeah.
So I think those guys, there was a couple of those early songs that definitely had a little bit of that rap rock vibe to it, which was certainly going on in the early 90s. But their first show as their first show as Stretch Armstrong was with NoFX and Lagwagon, and it was 1993, and NoFX was on the Sold Out tour, and they got an opening slot at a club in Columbia called Rockefeller's, where that was kind of like the holy grail of places to play for us, because all the big bands would come through. But the club was only 400 cap. I don't think I knew that when I was a teenager, how small it was. But that was the first show. So a lot of influences, 7 Seconds, Verbal Assault, NoFX, certainly. We were fans of Pennywise and a lot of the Fat Records type stuff. But Scott and I had grown up on 7 Seconds, Youth Brigade, Social Distortion. I mentioned Verbal Assault, Youth of Today, a lot of the straight edge bands. So that's kind of where we were coming from, or they were coming from. And then Matt and John kind of brought more of a metal influence to it, and all that kind of got together and mashed up and later became, the albums that followed.
Yeah, it's funny. All those bands that you just named, I can hear all of that in Stretch Armstrong, which makes sense. And yeah, it was like the first record, Compassion Fills the Void. It was like more of like the scary metallic hardcore that you would hear in the early to mid 90s, like the real straight edge, like looming stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and you can hear it. I think, and there's actually a little 5-song EP before Compassion that is, it's kind of rap rock. It really is. I was actually I was actually playing bass on that. Matt was singing. It was the 90s. We were in our 20s. And we were like, yeah, this sounds good. This is what's happening around us. We're trying to emulate what we heard. And yeah, it wasn't our best work, but everybody's got to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere, and you're a product of the times. I mean, whatever is going on, that's going to influence what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's just, and it was a great time. I mean, we were in our 20s and, we were doing this thing and people locally were responding and it was cool. And then from there, you just grow from that and you change and you try new things. And it's almost 30 years later, we're still kind of knocking around.
It's strange to think that, isn't it?
It is very strange.
Yeah. Sometimes I just stop and take a look and I'm like, what happened? What happened to the last 20 years? Not in a bad way, just like, wow, time flies.
It does fly, man. It's absolutely crazy. And I see that not only with my kids, but just, we got together and practiced this weekend for Furnace Fest coming up. And we've been friends since the 90s doing this thing, with the band. And it's just great to be around this group of guys having fun because it's not full time for us. We're not relying on it for financial stability. So we can have fun, get together, make some noise, play a very few amount of shows and still have fun with it.
Right. You can pick and choose what you want to do now. There's not this looming thing hanging over that you have to make it your entire life.
Yeah, which was what ultimately just, killed it because it was, you got to stay longer on the road to make any money, to make ends meet back home. And, we just weren't able to sustain it. And we were an older band and a young man's game and the tide was shifting and new sounds, new bands were coming in, and where we would had some moderate success, we saw the turnouts a little bit smaller the next time we came through, or not as many t-shirts sold, just natural progression. The kids had started to move on and there were more exciting, better, cooler bands and, and we weren't that anymore. And we realized it and we tried to get out with as much integrity and honesty as we could when we saw it just wasn't working anymore. We just didn't want to be one of those bands that just kind of kept doing it because we didn't know what else to do.
That makes sense. Yeah. So that was in 2005, around then?
It was actually, I want to say it was the end of 2006.
Okay. So you have Free at Last out, you're touring. At what point, how did you feel during that time? Because this is obviously different, but it's like, if I'm doing something and I see a dip from one week to the next, I'm like, well, I guess that's it. It's all over for me. But then, but then you hold out and, it's like an EKG. It's up, it's down. But like you said, you're doing shows and you see less t-shirt sales and you see less crowds. Like, what is your mindset at the time? Are you thinking, oh, maybe we're not writing the right music or we're too old? Like, what's your thought process at the time?
Yeah, I think all of that goes through your head, and then there's a little bit of like, well, okay, what are we not doing? What's not working here? What do we need to change? Okay, this band's doing that, so we definitely need to try that. And then if we get on this tour, that'll definitely fix the problem because they're popping off. And if we can do a support slot, and yeah, it's for less money than we normally get, but we'll get in front of that crowd. And then this is a new t-shirt that we've seen in the mall because we've been a band long enough that bands used to have shirts in the mall.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So we see these designs and yeah, they're neon pink on pink with a side print that goes down up underneath the arm and you can't really read what the name of the band is, but that's what and so we just got caught up in chasing, well, that must be what it takes. And I think as we look back, I don't think embarrassment's the right word, but like we had invested so much into this and we had put our families through so much of us not being there, funerals, birthdays, all these monumental, events that you share with family and loved ones along the way that we just weren't home for most of it. So as we started to see things dwindle, it was like, okay, let's double down. Let's stay longer on the road. Let's go play these places we haven't played in a while. Let's go back to Europe for the festivals. And then let's go back to Europe to follow up with Headline. And then we got offered a support tour. So let's go do that. And then there was times we were gone 8 months out of the year.
Wow.
And so we felt like, okay, we've already put our families through this. The very least we can do is give it everything we got and see if it clicks. And we owed money, to management, merch stores, the label. And I want to say, and the other guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but like the last 2 big tours, or, call it the last maybe year of the band, we were on tour paying people back what we owed them. And a booking agent who had been there from the beginning, the label that believed in us, management that was working really, really hard, and the merch store, the folks that were they're printing the shirts. We paid back everybody we owed money to. And so we came home broke, which is like the age old story. And we weren't doing that to, I'm not telling you that because we need a gold star on our lapel or a pat on the back, but we just didn't want to let anybody down ever to our own detriment. And that's what that last, I think there was somewhere, not that I do a lot of interviews or podcasts by any means, but I think I referred to it as like a dark period. And someone was like, wow, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm usually a pretty, I don't take myself too seriously ever. And I'm pretty self-deprecating, but it was a dark period. We were broke on the road trying to make it work. And we knew it wasn't happening, but we didn't want to leave people. We didn't want to owe people money. We didn't want to let people down. And so we kept doing stuff that probably wasn't, or definitely wasn't, good business decisions, but we tried to map it out where we could at least pay back what we owed and try to get ourselves to zero in the end. And so, yeah, it was a rough period, man. It was very bleak.
Well, I think I don't know if it's the best idea, but it's certainly a better idea than just leaving and being in tons of debt. I would want to try to come out zero at least so I could start fresh.
Yeah. And that was our idea. And now, as I'm looking back some 15 years later, or 17 years later, I'm glad that we did it that way, but it's taken, a lot of time and to just not to heal from it. And I certainly don't want to be overly dramatic because the good times far outweighed the bad. But there was a period, just like you said, you never thought you didn't know that we weren't a full-time band.
Yeah.
I think people on the outside that didn't know what we were dealing with, and they wouldn't, it was those last probably year and a half, 2 years, it was dark, man. Just we were trying to figure it out, and it was all coming to an end, something that we had believed in and we had gone for. It's just like anything else. When something that you've worked really, really hard for comes to an end, it's sad, man. It's a bummer.
Yeah, and that's the other thing from the 2-part thing I was saying earlier is that you guys have been doing this for over a decade. In a sense, it's all you knew, and you had each other. So even if it ends and it ends on good terms and everyone doesn't hate each other and all this stuff, it's still the end of a relationship, and it's still something you have to process.
Yeah, and the way you process it is different for everyone. And, some guys in the band just handled it differently. And I'm so grateful that, every time, because Scott lives in New Jersey, the Jeremy, David, John, myself all live here and, in and around Columbia. And so Scott comes down, and then the weekend that he's here, we get together, we have a big meal one of the nights, do a barbecue, have people over. It's just really rad, and sometimes you think you often wait, to do these celebrations of life or celebrations of being together, when you should do them more frequently. But with him being here and us all being together, I'm just grateful that we're all still friends. We paid off who we owed. There's no baggage that we're dealing with or not talking about. And I'm happy about that. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way to go.
Yeah. 'Cause I think, it's obviously that's not always the case.
No.
And I'm glad that we're able to do it this way.
So the band ends. There's a lot of time that goes by before there's any reuniting or anything like that. What did you do? How did your life change? How did you deal with the end of it?
Well, I think we just kind of assimilated into regular life, like, okay, I'm going to be home. I didn't want to go back to teaching. I had gotten pretty good at booking shows, or that's what I like doing, working with bands. So I kept doing that. David had gotten a job writing music for video games, and he was also teaching. He's also a teacher, but and not in a classroom. He was a classroom teacher, but he's been out of the classroom for a while, and he did some online teaching, and then he worked for the district. Jeremy had gone back to, I don't know what he was doing at the time, and John was able to pick back up where he had left off. And so we just kind of all went about our lives, and like David and I kept in touch just because we live close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd all just kind of drifted apart because we were trying to figure out what we looked like or what each one of us was doing now that we were no longer in a full-time touring band. And so from what I remember, everybody kind of picked back up some semblance of normalcy in like the civilian world. And we just didn't really, I never saw him. I see David, but I never saw anybody else. We'd chat, we were still friendly, but everybody was just doing life. At that point, some of the guys were married, had children. I had another child, and we just tried to figure out what the next steps were over the next, 10 years until we started kind of hanging out and seeing each other again. It's weird because I would spend so much of my time with these guys just in the weirdest corners of the world, sleeping on floors, flying in planes, driving in vans, playing cool clubs, playing squats, playing terrible clubs, all over the world. And then you get back home and you just never see each other. And it was always kind of weird to me, but I understood. I mean, people were trying to get busy with doing their own lives, and it bothered me, but not against anyone in particular, just, man, we were together for so long, and then here we are back home, and everybody's off doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's just part of life, and it is a pain because, like, I have really good friends that I used to hang out with every day, and every day I'm like, I need to call them. I should call them, but like your life is different now. You're locked into this routine and the new thing, and it's like, well, I just can't get to it right now.
Yeah. And then, kids and family and, extended family, that's all important stuff that we had put on hold for a number of years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, everybody was just figuring it out, man. Everybody was trying to figure out how to make it work.
That must have been a big culture shock for you, though, from going to being away 8 months out of the year to then being home all the time. I mean, were you like freaking out?
A little bit. A little bit. It was nice to be home for sure. But I still miss, it's funny, or not funny. It's probably somewhat twisted and demented, but my brother moved into a new place yesterday, and long story short, I was the one driving the U-Haul truck and helping to pack up the truck. And I was telling my wife, like, I really miss doing this. And she's like, what, moving? I'm like, no, like just getting a bunch of stuff, putting it to the back of a U-Haul, and driving to whatever destination to unload it all. It's weird. Like, I just miss that. I do miss traveling in Europe. I do miss traveling in Japan and going places. I love being home. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, there's a piece of me that for sure misses that travel, a little bit of the unknown, a little bit of what's going to happen here or in this country or at this border. Yeah, I miss that a little bit.
Maybe you could get a side gig as a mover, and it'll scratch that.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe so, and make a little money. Probably make more money doing that than I ever made in the band. So that's not a bit. Let me jot that down.
So how many years go by before you guys start talking about playing again?
So, man, I want to say in 2010, and I've got a poster that it's not in this office I could reference. In 2010 or 11, we played a show in Arizona, I think. We got asked to play a show there. I can see the date on the poster. John would know for sure. And we're like, yeah, sure, that would be cool. That would be fun.
What was the show?
Within These Walls Festival.
Okay.
in Phoenix, Arizona at the Nile. And we went out there. We hadn't been together, the five of us. I guess at that point it was probably 6 years, 5 or 6 years, maybe 5 years. Anyway, we get up there, show's packed. It's great. First song, Scott blows out his Achilles tendon, ruptured, completely shot. Just like Zach Taylor on these Rage Against the Machine shows. I think he blew it out like the third or fifth show, third song in.
Yep.
First song, we went back and watched the video. Scott looks back. Yeah, he just ruptured his Achilles. His Achilles tendon just rolled right up the back of his leg. So, like a trooper, he finishes the show. He and David, after the show, go to the ER. He gets put in a cast. They get back to the hotel. We go to the airport. We fly home, and we didn't do anything again for another 5+ years.
Whoa.
Typical Stretch Armstrong. If it could like go wrong or go sideways, it would.
Oh my God. Was the decision not to play again for so long because of the busted Achilles tendon, or was it just other stuff too?
It's just other stuff, man. It was just life. You know, it was nothing in particular, nothing that anybody had done or anything. It just was, you know, man, we just were like, okay, we did that. Scott hurt himself. I mean, because he could tell this better than me, but you know, he had to rehab that thing for like another year.
Oh.
And so he was forever bummed that was because he had been out of the band for a long time at that point. And then we got asked to do that show. We wanted to do it with the five of us. So we get together, we practice, we fly to Arizona, we do the show. First song blows his Achilles. So we all go back home, he rehabs, and then, you know, he's got 2 kids and he was in his life in New Jersey and we're all doing our thing. And yeah, it was about a year that he was rehabbing that. And so, you know, years turn into 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the conversation came up, you know, let's play a show or let's do something. And that was about the time the Furnace Fest guys were going to launch Furnace Fest. I want to say it had originally started in 20. So I think they announced it in 19 to play it in 2020, and then the pandemic hit and they had to push it, and then that's when it landed in 2021. So when we played Furnace Fest, that had been the first time we'd all been together since 2010. So
wow.
Like 11 years? Yeah.
You know, hearing this makes your set at Furnace Fest, it gives it more context because there was such excitement from a lot of people that I spoke to see you guys at Furnace Fest. And now I see why. I mean, listen, wait, that sounded wrong. I love the band. I love the music. But like the excitement, there was more excitement for you guys than a lot of other bands.
Yeah. And that was, you know, just always grateful, right? Always appreciate that. I know how they feel because there are other bands that make me feel that way. So I totally get it. But I think you're right. And then we are the only band that has played all 4 Furnace Fests. And so they had wanted us to play. They had reached out. And I just wasn't interested in playing again. You know, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go back down that road. Again, no bad reason, no animosity towards anyone. I just didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like anybody cared, you know? And Scott was really, really like, yo, let's do it. I think it would be cool. We should try it. We should do it. And then the other guys were like, if you want to do it, I'll do it. And so we're like, okay, let's do it. And it was great, man. And I was wrong. I was the one who didn't want to do it. I was the one that was the holdout, and the Furnace Fest guys were very persistent in the greatest way. And Scott was kind of leading that charge because I think he wanted a redo from Arizona where he had, you know, hurt himself. Yeah. And so it was, you know, there was a bit of redemption and all 5 of us getting up there and playing. And it was great, man. We had such a great time. And it was very nice, the 5 of us to be up there together again. It was great.
So you said you're the only band to play all 4 years?
Yeah, that's correct. That is correct.
That's got to feel good, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's very cool. Yeah, we did it.
I'd be printing that on T-shirts and selling it up.
Yeah, okay. I'm writing that down too. You got me the moving part-time mover and putting that on a shirt. I'm making.
You have
notes.
to.
Yeah,
it would sell like hotcakes.
Yes, it would.
So we've got the vinyl reissue of Rituals of Life coming up on Iodine Recordings.
That's right.
Before I get into how you got hooked up with Iodine and everything, take us back. Now, Rituals of Life is a classic. I can put on this record, and I still know every lyric. I remember seeing you guys when you were touring on that record. I lived in Bucks County, Pennsylvania at the time. You guys would come down and play a lot. And
what was always the venue? What was the closest venue for you? I'm just curious if I remember.
I remember seeing you at, let's see, Faith Reformed Church, Stalag. Yeah. No, not Stalag, Kill Time. What's that place? The Melody in Jersey.
Yep.
All those places.
We played them all. Yeah. I mean, we didn't play a lot of clubs back then. It was a lot of like fire halls and Moose Lodge and Elks Lodge and the occasional club. But, yeah, a lot of spaces, fire halls, houses, fields, all that stuff. I'm sorry. You asked a question. I totally forgot what you asked. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So the shows were so fun and energetic. I always looked forward to seeing you. And it's great because, Stretch Armstrong has more of like a classic hardcore punk feel. And I didn't listen to a lot of stuff like that. I was listening to a lot of crazy avant-garde stuff like Dillinger Escape Plan and Converge and Coalesce, the really technical metal heavy stuff.
Sure.
So like Rituals of Life just came out of nowhere and just everybody loved it, including myself. So take us back. How do we get the attention of Solid State? Talk about the recording of the record because, we had more of like a darker mid-90s hardcore sound on Compassion. And then Rituals of Life is just this fun explosion of energetic hardcore punk. Like, take us back to that time a bit.
So we had done the Compassion Fills the Void album, and then we were, again, the part-time band, and we had played enough to where I think there was some interest, some labels were interested in maybe doing something, and we were like, yeah, well, we want to do something for sure. Victory Records, again, if I'm trying to get the facts right, but Victory Records was interested in doing something with us. And we knew it was going to be more than we could deliver. And I think at that time, there were rumblings of some bands not being happy with Victory. As I recall, it was something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember getting a phone call, or there was a message that Scott and I used to live together back then. And there was a voicemail. Tony Victory had called our house. We were going to call him, or I was going to call him or something. I don't remember. And then Scott had gotten a letter, an actual old school letter with like a strong arm CD or a song. Maybe it was a tape. And I think that's how we found out about Solid State or Tooth and Nail. And so we sent them some stuff. And we probably called and sent them letters and called and sent more letters. And eventually they were interested. We figured it out. They signed us for, 3 or 4 or 5 albums, too many. And we wanted to go record where the other Solid State bands had recorded, which was Little Rock, Arkansas. Barry Porner recorded the album. That would have been in 1999. And I think we did it all in like 10 or 11 days, everything. Drove out there, stayed. David and my wife came with us because it was on Christmas break. Yeah, she was on Christmas break from teaching. I was on Christmas break from teaching. We drove out. Everybody drove out. We recorded. David and my wife drove back because they had to be at school like right after New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And John, Jeremy, Scott, and myself stayed out there and finished it. And that came out in 1999. And it was good. We toured a lot. We went to Europe in 2000 on that album. We went back to Europe, toured the States, flew, to Puerto Rico, these different places to play. And it's cool. A lot of people still relate to those songs. And I think for a lot of people, that was kind of their introduction to us. So I think it holds a special place for them, which is always great. It's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you saw increased interest in the band once the record come out. How quickly did it happen? Were you getting booked more? Like what was the?
We got a booking agent. Matt Pike was at the Kenmore Agency at the time, and he was booking all the bands we wanted to be on tour with. You mentioned Converge, and at that time he was booking everybody: Converge, Reach the Sky, Bane, Throwdown, 18. I don't know if it was 18 Visions. All the bands we wanted to be on tour with, he was booking. And so I think the album, further solidified us as a band that could sell tickets or, get people to shows. And, we definitely saw an improvement in people taking interest in us because they had 12 songs from a label that, was a real label that people had heard of. And, I think it made people feel like we were more of a real band or, whatever that means.
Plus that I'll Melt With You cover at the end. I mean, that's one of the best. I have to say that's one of the best covers. I love that. That's just perfect.
I appreciate it. We still play it and people still want to hear it. No, it's a great, Modern English. It's a great song on its own. And David and I had messed with that for years and years and years. Just, this would be a cool cover. This is a punk song. They don't even know it's a punk song, but it's a punk song. And so we recorded it. It's 2 or 3 chords and we still play it and people still want to hear it. So it's cool, man.
It's the perfect mix. It's like not too much like the original, but enough so you can definitely recognize it. And just the punk aesthetics and the fast stuff that you throw into it. It's perfect.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to do a cover. I never like when bands take a cover and just completely change it. Right. I personally don't like that. So we did try to do it as straight up as we could, but just go faster. And I think we did a pretty good job with that.
So how was your experience on Solid State? Was it good? Did you like it?
Yeah, it was good. They were very nice to us. I think we were a bit different than the other bands they were working with and signing. We weren't a Christian band. We weren't this band of believers that was on a mission to play all the churches and play all the youth groups in that, in those types of places. And a lot of the bands on the label were.
Yeah.
And I think looking back, it probably wasn't the best decision in the world. Because we never intended to mislead or confuse the kids. But I think just by association, a lot of kids were confused because they would come up and at the show, they would want to pray for us or they would want to pray with us.
Yeah.
Or they would want to lay hands on us and pray over us. And it's very nice, right? I think when people do that, I think it's a kind gesture.
Yeah.
Right. I for the most part, I think that's where they're coming from. So we were real conflicted. This is very important to this person. The last thing we want to do is embarrass them or make them feel weird or in typical Stretch Armstrong, we would endure the strange and weirdness that we felt so that person wouldn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like signing an autograph, right? I don't want to sign an autograph, but I don't want you to feel weird for asking me to sign the autograph by me saying no. So what do? Yeah, of course I'll sign it. No problem. And so when those things would happen and we would play these events and we would play with these bands that were overtly Christian bands, I think we inadvertently misled people and we didn't mean to. And I think in hindsight, if we could have changed that, we would. But we were just trying to put our stuff out because we've been putting it out for so long on our own, dime. And Solid State came along and they're like, we've got an art department and we've got, recording places you can go record. And here's some money to go do it. And here's some money for a van. And here's some money for some good equipment. So we were just like, yeah, that sounds great. And so I think probably our judgment got a little bit clouded. And I think if we could go back and change that, we would. But at the same time, maybe that's why we have continued to be a band that some people care about,
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't really think it's on you per se. Like you're part of this label, but people are going to interpret it however they want. Like there's right-wing guys out there who love Rage Against the Machine, and like they take the lyrics of Rage Against the Machine and make it about what they're about, and they don't realize that the lyrics are completely against what they're about.
That's exactly true. That is, yeah, that's true. And you know, Rage is just Rage. They do what they do, right? They haven't changed it, and people can interpret those lyrics to maybe fit what's going on in their head. And so, you know, it got, even with the guys, like, you know, majority of everyone but me, you know, drank. Not that we're out there boozing up and going crazy, but you know, they wouldn't drink at the show, you know, or they would drink like after the show. If there was a green room, we were just so concerned with the kids not being let down. We didn't want to let them down.
Yeah.
And I think and again, I'm not saying this so that anybody will think we're anything great or whatever. We're just five, you know, just dudes from the Carolinas. And we just didn't want to let anybody down. We didn't want to let the kids down who maybe thought we were this. We didn't want to let the kids down who thought that we were like this. So after the show, back at the hotel, if the guys wanted to drink, they would drink, or a little bit of partying, you know. And so I think we spent a lot of time doing that and I guess that's what I mean by like with the regret and with the label, you know. But you know, maybe you're right. That wasn't on us to do that. It was for other people to form their opinions, interpretations. But that's just kind of, I don't know. It's the way we're built, the way we're wired, the way we wanted to be. And I think we added some undue stress and some undue expectations that we thought people had of us.
It's understandable given the situation. Like I remember a long time ago, I was out after a show, right? And I'm at a diner and I'm sitting with the band One King Down. And I was very conflicted about ordering a chicken sandwich in front of them. I was like, should I? Are they going to get mad? But you know, I just did.
Yeah, and those guys would say, of course you should order the chicken sandwich, just because they're rad dudes. You know, we did several tours with them. But that's the way you felt. You didn't know how they felt. And so I get it, man. That was the majority of our time as a band, was internalizing things just like that. It happens, man.
Did you ever have any conflict with the label? Or are they like, oh, don't sing about this or don't do that? Was there any of that kind of stuff?
Never. I think it was implied that you wouldn't curse.
Yeah.
Which I just never did in my lyrics anyway. And that wasn't for anything other than I just always have tried to convey a message without cursing. Now, there's a lot of bands who use curse words very, very well. And, you know, a lot of them I listen to and like. But for me and our songs, we just never did. And again, it wasn't some strategic plan. It's just I didn't put curse words in the songs. And so that any sort of requirements they had for us, which I don't remember there being any, we were kind of already doing anyway.
So how did you hook up with Iodine Recordings? I mean, we've got this Rituals of Life vinyl repress coming out. It all sold out in like a day, by the way. Did you see that?
It was great. Yeah. So my boy was trying to order the album. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm trying to get the green or the yellow or whatever the vinyl was. And I feel bad. I didn't even really know. And he's like, but I can't get, I got it. And I'm like, what do you mean you got it? He's like, well, there was only 2 left. I'm like, well, let me call Scott because I'm sure there's more. And Scott's like, no, they're all gone. And so then we started seeing people reselling them for like way too much money.
Oh, no.
And so Scott was trying to post, this is where you can get it for the real price. Or Scott was like doing a really good job of trying to mitigate people charging too much for the album.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're all gone.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy. You know, it's very cool. And so, yeah, Scott and Casey had been chatting for a while. And I think it just kind of came out of that. You know, Scott would, hey, we're working on this. We're going to do Furnace Fest. And I think Casey said, well, that'd be cool to re-release that album. So Casey and his team, and there's another guy, and I don't know his name, and Scott would know it. And
I think Joe.
Yes.
Joe Grillo. Yeah.
Yes. And so those guys had to go get the permission to do that because I think Solid State Tooth and Nail had sold the catalog to like Universal or Warner, and they had to get permission to re-release these songs. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it was some hurdle jumping and a lot of passion, a lot of devotion, a lot of just real effort to get this thing to fruition. And it's just been really cool to see what all they've done, how people have reacted, and just kind of what's come out of it. It's very cool. It's very cool to see it.
Yeah, it has to feel good. I mean, thinking back to being out on the road just to break even at zero and all the years that had gone by. And I mean, I bet you never imagined that this album would be re-released and every copy bought up in a fervor like that.
Yeah, no, never thought. Because I'm always the guy that's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, I think that's probably a terrible idea. And Scott's like, no, man, Casey's, he's committed. He's passionate. This is what he does. It's his thing. And I'm like, okay, all right. You think he's going to sell the records?
No, I get it. I'm like you. I assume no one cares about anything I'm doing, and that's partly to protect me and partly just because of like insecurity or whatever. But I'm like, no one cares,
Yeah, that's just how I roll through life.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, and I'm not like I'm not a downer or a buzzkill. I'm just like, oh, okay. I don't think anyone's gonna like that, and if you really believe in it, yeah, that'd be cool. And sure enough, they did, which is great. I hope he has made whatever money there is to be made or got back to zero or whatever it is. It's certainly been great on this side of things to see the reaction. And our kids, as Jeremy has 4 kids, David has 1, Scott has 2, I have 2. It's nice that our kids, my daughter was old enough to see our shows when she was very little, but it's nice that our kids are getting to kind of enjoy this, people recognizing the band or us playing some shows. It's cool that they're able to kind of see it because they weren't alive when we were doing it before.
Right. What do they think of it? What do they think of it now that they see everything and they've seen some gigs now?
There's this general idea that you're kind of embarrassed of your parents and like your parents are only going to embarrass you and your parents aren't cool and oh my gosh, why did you say that? And so there's still that, don't get me wrong, but they like wear the merch. Like they go to the shows and like whenever we've got not that we have a lot of shows, but like if Scott has rolled out some merch or a Furnace Fest post and he's reposted on the band's socials, like my kids repost it and my kids like put it on their page and their stories and wear the shirts and like they're just like I said, man, it's very cool. Yeah, they're into it. They love it.
I love that. That's got to feel so good, right?
It does, man. It does. Like, I just, my wife is the one that just, has given the kids the brains they have and, just made them great people. And I'm always like, I contribute. I'm funny and I try to be funny, give them a good sense of humor. And, I make sure they're taken care of as she does as well. But I guess I always minimize maybe what I brought to their upbringing because I was gone so much. But having them experience the band now that they're in their 20s or, he's a teenager, it's been very cool. It's great. And all the guys, kids are just stoked on what's going on, which is great, man. It's really cool.
I love that. That's awesome.
Me too, man.
And, along with the record and everything else that Iodine is selling, there's this fanzine, Rituals of Life fanzine, and we've got essays from Hatebreed, Bane, Rise Against, The Gaslight Anthem, Stick to Your Guns, Further Seems Forever. I mean, the amount of nice things that people have to say about the band and the reach of the band and the legacy and the amount of influence. I mean, did you have any idea? Did you think about that at all? And what is your reaction to seeing all of this?
So have you seen them or read them? Have you? I've not seen the zine. Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
So Scott and I were having a conversation because again, Casey was wanting to do some cool stuff. So At around about the time that this was being talked about, 7 Seconds was re-releasing The Crew.
Mm-hmm.
And inside there was just this booklet, and the album's a gatefold. So there's just all this room for not only the lyrics, but cool things about the band. So through punk and hardcore, always as important of the music was what the liner notes, right? I read who did they thank? Where did they record? What was their comment on this? Like, what was that band they thanked? Because then I would go find that band. And then who's that person they keep talking about? Well, he's in this band or she's in that band. I would go find that. So we were like, if would be interested in this, maybe we could do like a cool booklet or something to go with the album. And then I don't think it was my idea, but at one point Scott and I were talking and I said, what if we had some peers, some friends, maybe just jot down some things and send them in. If it's cool, we could put it in the zine. So I would reach out. Scott was kind of dealing with some stuff with the album. I said, well, here, I'll take this on. Let me do this. Take it off your plate. It's one thing I can do. So I would just reach out to these people that you mentioned. And I said, I know it's weird to ask someone to write something about you, but we think this would be cool. And if there's a couple things you would like to say about how you discovered us or any interactions we had, could you write them down? But I don't want to read them. So I'll give you Scott's email or Casey's email and you can send them direct. So I haven't read them and I didn't want to read them specifically until the booklet, the zine came out. Now Scott and I got sent one as a proof just to make sure. So I did scan it and I started reading them and I didn't finish them because I didn't want to read them, but just back to what you said, just people saying some of the things they said, like, and not just us, but just you never know the impact you have on someone, whether you're in a band or you're at work or you're a friend or whatever, just the way you can make someone feel or the way you can act around someone that makes them think about something differently, right? So some of these bands that are still career bands that were coming up the same time we came up, that are still there, successful, just saying just like the nicest things. And I'm floored, man. And everybody was like, yes. And so I was thinking they were going to write maybe a sentence or two, but some people just wrote on and on and on. They're like, is this too much? I'm like, I don't know, but I'll forward it over and I'll let them tell you because I don't want to read them because I wanted to see it when it came out. I'm dying to read them, but I didn't want to read them yet.
Yeah, I would have done it that way too because I just wouldn't feel comfortable reading a bunch of nice stories about me, as people are sending them in.
No, because it was already weird enough me saying, "Hey, can you write something nice about our band or say how cool we are?" So I was just like, whatever you want to say. These guys were dicks, or these guys are terrible. They're a crummy band. I don't like, whatever. Just write something down. We'd like to submit it with the zine because I think it would be cool. And I think it turned out great.
That's awesome. And that's the great thing about music is that it's timeless. Of course, there's shifts in trends and what's going on and all that stuff. But this music is out there. It's out there. It's not going away. Anyone can pick it up at any time and be inspired. And it just lives on. I mean, it seems to have grown over the years.
Yeah. And I think about, all the bands that made me feel that way or bands that still make me feel that way. Music, just like you said, it's so important and it's so personal and just the way it makes you feel. And to have people that I just respect and admire and love so much, even take the time to write something about us it's just great, man. It's just, I don't know. It's great. This whole thing is great.
Yeah, it has to feel good. It just has to. We've got re-releases, we've got new merch, you've got gigs coming up. I saw you played a gig recently in South Carolina with Hope's Fall and some other bands.
Yeah, we played back in April because we hadn't played a proper Columbia show, 15 years, I think it was something like that. And there again, I was like, I don't know, man. Why don't, playing at home, that was tough enough when we were a full-time band and you go back and play at home and just always stressful. Family was there, friends were there, and you were never home. So David has been real involved with an organization here called Palmetto Place, which is a home for children that are homeless, and all kinds of stories, And so he's been a volunteer there, getting involved, bringing them supplies, from paper towels to mouthwash to toothpaste to, cleaning products, just everything. He got involved with that. So he kind of had the idea, well, I know we're on the fence about playing in town, but what if we played in town and we gave all the money away? I was like, okay, well, that sounds like a great idea. Like if I'm going to play a show, let's do something cool. Cause we always were known for, if you come to the show, bring a canned good, it's $1 off your ticket. Or, bring a coat. In the winter, we would do a coat drive. We would take the coats, take them to the shelter. Because that's what we grew up on, right? In Columbia, bands would do that before us, so we tried to do it. So David said, well, because I didn't want to do it. I was like, why are we doing this again? Like, let's just... So if we're going to play in town, let's make it meaningful. Let's do something cool. So David coordinated it. So in addition to writing them a pretty substantial check, he also rented a U-Haul, and we had people bring stuff to the show. So we said, let's not just do a show. Let's do something fun. So we did the donations. We had a bunch of food, not a bunch. We had 2 food trucks outside. We had a DJ spinning. So while people are out waiting in line, getting a beer, getting, some vegan chicken sandwiches or whatever, we just wanted to do something cool. If we're going to do this, let's do something cool, something fun. And so we did. We had Hope's Fall, we had Advent, we had Rat Poison, and we just had a great show. I mean, it was just it was a great show for a great cause. And I hate to use that word magical because that just gets thrown around, but it was perfect, man. It was a perfect night weather-wise. Spring in the Carolinas can either be just soaking wet or just nice and cool. It was the perfect evening. The show was sold out. We were able to stroke a really healthy check to the charity. David collected a bunch of stuff to take to the children's home. And it was great, man. It was absolutely great. So great that I'm afraid if we tried to recreate that show next year, it just wouldn't be as good. That's how perfect that night was.
I know the feeling. Like Furnace Fest last year was so perfect. I'm almost afraid to go again this year because I'm like,
I am too.
What if it's not the same? But I'm sure it will be. It'll just be different.
I'm sure it will be.
I don't want to use magic, but it'll be different magic,
Different magic. Okay. Yeah. I hope so.
Different magic. That sounds like a good album name. You want to run that one down too.
I could. I'll jot it down with the shirt idea and the moving idea. I like it. It's a 3. It's got 3 of them now. It's a trilogy.
Whenever I think of Columbia, South Carolina, I think of one of the craziest nights of my life. I was on tour in 2003. What would have been the venue to play in Columbia, South Carolina in 2003?
What band?
It was Thursday, This Day Forward, Every Time I Die. And it was a disaster of a show. And I mean, on my part, I drank way too much. I was up all night. It was just like a wild experience.
I'm going to tell you this. I did the show. It was at New Brooklyn Tavern, and we were on tour. And I'm not 100%, but I think This Day Forward broke up shortly after that show, and Circus Survive started.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm telling you, my brain, I remember, because Brendan from Circus Survive, who I've done a lot of shows for, Stretch Armstrong was supposed to go on tour with This Day Forward shortly after that tour.
Oh.
They broke up. I don't think they broke up at New Brooklyn Tavern, but they broke up on that tour, as I remember.
No, it was, I was on that tour. I used to sell merch for them, and they broke up later that year.
Later that year. Okay. So okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're from PA as well, right? I mean, I know.
Yeah, we're all from the same hometown, or everyone kind of settled there, and I know those guys very well. So I'm happy to hear that you do too.
Yeah, well, I don't know them as well as you do, but just from the Circus Survive shows and knowing Brendan from the hardcore days.
Yeah.
And Anthony and I still keep in touch. and that's where Circus survived. So that was definitely New Brooklyn Tavern, and I did the show.
That's amazing.
Yeah, small
I'm
world,
glad
man.
I asked you though. Like, who would have thought
Yep.
that you did the very show that I was at where I was a disaster?
And I can even see the flyer in my head, if you can believe it or not. It drives my wife crazy. Just these minute details that I remember. I don't know what that is. Dates, like just the minutia of just all that just useless info is just swirling around my head.
I think that's amazing. Photographic memory.
I don't know if it's that, but it's something. It drives her crazy. Yeah.
I have to tell you something random and stupid, but I always
Okay.
randomly think about this. So I just have to tell you. My friend booked you in Bucks County a long time ago, 1999, 2000, something like that. I was working the door at the show.
Mhm.
I must have been 17 years old at the time.
Did you steal from us?
No, but
I'm
you guys
joking.
were playing, and I took songs from Rituals of Life, and I sped them up so that they sounded like the Chipmunks, or like slowed them down so they sounded really doomy, and I was like playing them before you guys went on because I thought it was funny. But that's kind of a weird thing to do to a band before they go on. So sorry about that.
That's okay. I was gonna bring that up, but I didn't. You did it, so I feel better about it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
you knew it was me, and you were
I did.
you were gonna bring it up.
But I wanted you to bring it up first.
So now it's all good.
Yeah. Now, when you say Bucks County,
Yeah.
okay, a little more specific.
That's outside of Philadelphia. We had a great scene there. Do you remember playing Palenka Park in Bensalem, PA ever?
Yes.
Yeah. There was always shows there, and that Faith Reformed Church I mentioned earlier. You guys were down a lot. Like everybody came through.
We used to play there with like Poison I remember a show with Poison the Well.
Yep.
And Ensign, and I don't think Circus Survive played, but I remember those guys being there. Would that be around their hometown?
Yeah,
that
they
area?
were in This Day Forward at that time.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, we had a lot of great shows coming through there all the time.
And it was in that church.
Yes. I remember specifically you and Poison the Well. I think more than once being together.
Oh, dude, it was quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, let's go to PA for the weekend. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And because I think Poison the Well was a full-time band, and I don't know if that was around that major label, like Velvet Hammer or something they were on, which was like an imprint of a major, and they were really doing it up. And we would go play with them, and of course, it was like 5 or 6 bands always. And I remember playing that church, and like the shows were cool, as I recall.
Yeah. The amount of great shows. That's how I started this whole podcast because, I used to have a co-host. We would talk about the local scene and all the great shows, and I had all those people on, and it was like commonplace. Our local shows would be Stretch Armstrong, Poison the Well, Dillinger Escape Plan, you name it, like all the bands of the time.
I believe it, man. I mean, those places just because you couldn't get into the clubs, so you'd play these like spots in the suburbs outside of the big cities, and they were great.
There would be a ton of people there.
Always, man.
So let's talk about what we've got coming up. Now, we know we've got the Rituals of Life repress coming up. We know we've got ROL fanzine. We know we've got a new line of merch. So to everyone listening, go to iodinerecords.com and pick something up. I mean, the records are gone, but you can get other stuff. But Chris, what else is coming up? Have we got more gigs? Is there any talk of new music? Lay it on us.
So, yeah, I mean, I think so. We're playing Furnace Fest this year, and then Scott in New Jersey. Like New Jersey was a place we used to always play. So we're trying to make New Jersey happen. We'd like to get to the West Coast. There's a couple festivals in Europe that I think have been interested in having us play. And so we're working towards playing those places. We certainly would like to do it. As I mentioned, everyone's got full-time lives, full-time jobs. And so if we can, we're going to try and play those places again. Nothing set in stone. As far as new music, we're writing new stuff, rehearsing new stuff. And if it's good, if it's cool and we can record it, we will. But we're just trying to have fun at our own pace and our own time. So it doesn't, feel like a drag, which is we just don't want that to happen.
I'm excited. I'm excited for more.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you giving me a second chance on this thing. I'm sorry I blew it the first time.
Oh,
but
right.
No, I appreciate it.
No,
I appreciate you taking the time. I really do, and asking the questions.
To our listeners, Chris and I have been working on this. We had some scheduling conflicts, but we got it done. But listen, we're all adults. We're all busy, but we always get it done. Right, Chris?
Clearly, we do. And here we are.
We did it. So, Chris, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. I've been listening to Stretch Armstrong for a very long time now. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what the band does, as does many, many people out there. I'm glad you're still doing it. I'm looking forward to more, so thank you so much.
Yeah, man, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hope to meet you in person.
You will at Furnace Fest this year.
Come up and say what up.
I am going to.
All right, pal. Thank you.
And there you have it. Chris McLean. Really awesome conversation. I'm glad I got to speak to Chris. I've been a fan of Stretch Armstrong for a really long time. This Rituals of Life reissue is exciting, and it was a great story. Hearing about their beginning, hearing about their experience on Solid State and some of the stuff they had to deal with, like people thinking they're a Christian band, but they're not, but they don't want to be dicks to people, and it's just an awkward situation. Plus, the reunion. Oh, yeah. And the biggest reveal was Chris saying they weren't a full-time band, I think, until that tour, that big tour with Good Charlotte and Newfound Glory, and that really surprised me because, like I told Chris, I saw them all the time. I saw them out there all the time. I saw them multiple times, and they just made the band work with their schedules on winter breaks during summer. And, to get to that level while technically not being a full-time band, it just shows that with enough determination, you can really achieve anything. So really nice guy. Glad I got to speak to him. Awesome conversation with Chris.
Yeah, that's wild. They were not a full-time band for the whole time I was seeing their name everywhere.
Right?
Wow.
That's like, I was stunned. He and Chris said the same thing, that people were just like very surprised to hear that. So I don't know, like it just shows that, I think he was a teacher, he was a teacher. I think maybe some of the other guys were teachers. I can't remember, but they could only tour during the winter and summer. So like the fact that they got that much done with the limited schedule, and, people didn't even give a thought about them not being a full-time band. It just shows the hustle.
Also being teachers, you could work smarter and not take tours or shows that are dumb, and you have that time off and you do what's smart to do. And I mean, I tell you, I saw their poster in like every venue that I played for like 4 years. They're always either just coming through after or before or something. So
yeah. Have you seen them before?
No, I saw them at Furnace Fest.
Oh yeah. That was a crazy set.
Yeah.
A lot of hype, a lot of excitement, and I can't wait to see them again this year.
Yeah. And, like they acted like the way that they looked on stage. I've never met any of the guys, but super humbled and happy to have that happen. They weren't the kind of reunion band that just expects a giant crowd, and you're a nice band, nice people, and you can come back 20 years later and have this insane show. So
that's another thing I liked about Chris, is he was just super humble during the whole discussion. When he was talking about the reunion, he has the kind of attitude where he's just like, nobody's going to care. Or like, they booked Furnace Fest because they were like, people might not care soon. So that's just the way his mind works. And I'm kind of the same way. I just assume no one's ever going to care. And it's like a constant humble thing. Well, most of the time, I have my moments. They're the only band to play every Furnace Fest.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. How many Furnace Fests have there been, though, aside from this one that just happened last year? 3
4
or 2?
Total.
4 total.
Yeah.
2000, 2001, 2002, and 20.
I think it's 4. I remember the number 4.
It's not that many. I'll tell you, it's not that many.
Yeah, definitely 2003 was the last one. Okay. So it started, I guess, 2001 to 2003, and then this last one. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Are you going to be there again this year?
I'm playing.
Wait, who's
both
playing?
Both bands.
Oh.
We're playing. Fairweather is headlining the pre-show, one of the pre-shows, and Be Well is playing the same show.
Oh, I saw a flyer for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Fairweather, Be Well, Better Off, and the other pre-show is like the metal hardcore show, which is Shai Hulud and Unearth.
Wow.
So Yeah, I was a little worried that they were gonna put us up against some bands that were like a little more similar to us, which would have been kind of a bummer. But I feel like, I mean, I would love to be at the Shai Hulud show, but I feel like, you know, if you really want to see Fairweather or Be Well, you're going to go to that show. And if you want to see Unearth and Shai Hulud, you go to that one. It's not going to be that great of a dilemma for people to have. I'm just happy to do it. And it's a show. So that's the other thing. Be Well played the actual fest proper last year, and it was super fun. But, you know, we played for like 19 minutes, and this time we get to play in a club with air conditioning and do a proper set. And I get to do both bands. So it's going to be a slog, but it's going to be really fun.
I just saw the flyer for that, I think last night or the night before.
Uh-huh.
And I saw Fairweather and Be Well listed one after another on the flyer. And the first thing I thought was, Peter is going to be really tired.
Well, I'm not even the drummer that's in both bands. So Shane plays drums in both bands. So he's going to have his work cut out for him even more than me. But, you know, we get to share, we'll share gear. We'll, you know, go up in one vehicle. I think everybody from Be Well is going to go arrive separately. And if we're going to only do the thing was, like, Fairweather's trying to debate what we can accomplish this year. And if we were going to do one out of town show, it should be the one that everybody's already in, the town that everybody's in, you know? So it was kind of like very serendipitous that it kind of happened at the same time as this. And then we got the offer, which we didn't really know we were going to get an offer, which is also very humbling to think that they are going to throw one of the whole pre-shows to us, which is cool. And to all the other bands. So not like, you know, we're happy to be able to do this. We played in 2000. I guess we played the first one, 2001.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That, are you going to be at the actual fest too, or just this?
We're going to stay for 1 or 2 days afterwards.
Okay. Hopefully I'll run into you. I'll be,
yes.
I'll be at the whole thing this year.
Do you guys have a booth, or does Iodine have a booth?
Iodine has a booth this year.
Okay.
And I will be stationed at the booth at various points. So
great.
It's going to be good. And I'm happy about that because I'm kind of awkward. Yeah. So I usually don't walk up to people and say like, hey, I'm so-and-so, because I don't know. I always feel like I'm bothering people or they won't care.
Yeah.
But the Iodine tent will be good because I'll be stationed there. They can come up. I'll say hi. It'll be great.
Yeah. You can not even talk to them if you want and just exchange money or a shirt. Or you could say, hey, I know you from... I get a lot of this. I'll see somebody, or I'll be friends with somebody on the internet that I've never met before. Yeah. And I will approach them and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. We follow each other on the internet. And a lot of times you get the person acting weird. Like, you've hit like on my pictures, but when I say that I follow you on Instagram, they're like weirded out. Like, it's not cool to say that. But
that's why I don't do the approach, because it's like, I'm so afraid of that moment. This happened to me the other day. There's someone I know. We follow each other on Instagram, and we're on a back and forth like thing, right?
Yeah.
So I saw them in person, and I went to say hi, got completely snubbed.
See, you got one life to live, man. I'm trying to keep my feet in the real world here.
Yeah.
And if you can look at Instagram as a way to actually meet people, I don't know. I don't understand. I can't begin to understand.
I think it's, I go by the vibe of the person too. Like, you know, based on everybody I talk to, I can kind of tell how the conversation would go. Like you, if I saw you, I would walk up and say, hey, it's Keith. And I feel like it would go just fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right now, it depends though. I might pretend I don't know you. Depends on who I'm talking to. You know what I'm saying?
If you're with somebody that's too important, you might be like, who are you? Now is not the time. Look, I get it. This is showbiz, right?
Yeah. You know, I just got to get a little further down the road because I might make it at any moment. I might become huge.
Well, you might this year, Peter. Let's talk about, you've been up to a lot. We've got a new Fairweather EP, Deluge. Now, first, let me say, I really love the EP.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's awesome. The songs are great. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I don't know how much not that anybody's listening remembers when we spoke last time, but we've been writing these songs for years. And we kind of went into it with no expectations or anything, probably, I want to say late 2015, 2016. And this is about the same time our drummer Shane had his second child. And so we couldn't really go out and promote the self-titled that came out in 2014 so much. And as a band, we really love writing together. And so we just were like, okay, if this is what we're going to do, let's just lean into it and do it well we didn't have any expectations from a label or a booking agent to do X, Y, and Z. And we also at the same time wanted to include our other friend, Nick, who was in my old band Olympia. We wanted him to come in and play bass. The bass player from Fairweather was always a guitar player. And we just kind of convinced him to play bass in Fairweather for like a decade. But he's a nice guy, so he just did it for us. But our friend Nick is a bass player. Ben, who was the other bass player, there's 2 bands in the band. We thought that it would be fun to write music with 3 guitar players live, so we could kind of do the things, we could orchestrate the ideas that we would have once we finished the song. So it kind of opened up our different paths of writing, having 3 people play guitar live and different parts you could create that we never really thought of before. Probably started with maybe like 10 ideas for songs and whittled it down. And then we thought maybe these 4 songs sound the most similar. And then we decided just instead of, you think in your head you have to make an album, or like a full-length album. And instead we just kind of decided that this is the vibe we want. And it was just these 4 songs. And then those 4 songs ended up changing over the years. Like I said, if you don't have an expectation of having to play a show or the label's on your ass to get a new record done, there's no time frame. And then people got married and people had kids and jobs and people moved away. Our singer moved to Houston during this whole thing. And the songs kind of came together right as the pandemic was starting to happen. And we tracked the drums in the end of 2019 before the first lockdown. And then we slowly tracked the rest of the record over the course of a year, which again, you would think that would be kind of a slog, but it was really just really freeing to be able to not have any like expectation about when something, of course, Ben Green, who's our other guitar player who produced the record, probably wanted to blow his brains out after a while because we weren't done. And he runs a recording studio and he has to actually have business come into the recording studio. But having the recording studio gave us the leeway to just like, let's do feedback for this whole Sunday, because there's this part that we had feedback that we had the idea for, and we just were able to kind of lean into it. And it just kind of turned out that we still have a relationship with EVR, and it made sense to kind of stay in the family and go that route. And the thing about that is that they know where we are, and they know us as a band, and they know we're not going to just go out on tour full time. And so when the expectations are there, you can talk about putting out a record with everybody in agreement on that. And I honestly, the hardest part about it was towards the end of the record getting ready was the Be Well record was starting to get ready to come out. And that record came out a month before the Fairweather record, and we were playing a ton of shows. And so I went from like not doing a lot to having 2 bands that are kind of busy, which is a very first world problem to have. I have to remind myself to kind of like chill out and not be so stressed about it.
When it rains, it pours.
I know. I mean, it's, oh no, it's so lame. It's such a bummer. I have to play in these 2 cool bands and play shows with all these cool other bands that I've been watching my whole life. It's really hard on me.
That's what I was just going to say. Oh man, I have these 2 great EPs out on 2 great labels and I'm playing these great shows. Oh, life sucks.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, it's hard. I'm 45. My body is not happy about it.
I get it. I had Brian McTurnan on the show, and one of my questions to him was, how do you find the energy to do all of this? Because when I just carry my equipment to the practice space and I'm done.
Yeah.
So
sure.
So how do you do it, Peter? You're 45, you're in 2 bands, you got 2 releases, you're playing multiple shows.
I love it, man. I love playing music, and I love being able to do it with my best friends. And I think, you want to finish something you start. And I've always had that kind of drive. If I start something, I need to finish it no matter how in the weeds it gets. But I think maybe 5 or so years ago, I kind of had the epiphany that there doesn't need to be an end to anything. Like, a band doesn't have to break up. A band doesn't have to, you're much more happy to do something on your own terms. And now granted, it's easy for people to say you should do something on your own terms when you have a record that's on a cool label and you have these shows to play. And I know I hate it when bands are like, just do it yourself and put out the record. Like if you're fucking Radiohead or something, and you can literally do whatever you want. But I work in a museum, and I have a pretty physical job. I'm a kind of a carpenter. I've build the exhibits and I handle artwork. So I'm on my feet all day. So as much as I feel like I'm not really in shape, I'm active all the time. And, I just kind of live for the moments of when I can get together with the guys and we can have that 30 minutes on stage to just kind of do the thing that we're all really good at doing together. So I just love it. There's days when, my back is like fucking over it, but I get through it.
That makes sense. That's how I get through everything I'm doing too. Whether, I really don't want to finish recording this podcast episode. Well, you have to. It's going out Monday and you love it, so finish it. Or, oh, it's too hot to carry all my equipment to band practice. Well, you really want to play shows again, right? Yes. Okay, so go do it. You just get it done.
Yeah, and a deadline sometimes helps, like you're saying with the podcast. Sometimes that's the thing that you need as an artist. I'm a painter. I don't really paint anymore because I'm too busy working and doing music. But a deadline, if I were to write a whole solo record, I probably would never finish it unless somebody said I had to finish it or I would drop dead, by a certain amount of time. So certain artists work with a deadline really well. But then, I don't know about you, but I don't know when I'm going to be able to have these opportunities again. I'm not just going to have record labels and promoters calling me up forever asking me to play a show, and I may not want to. So I kind of have to, and I think everybody in both bands kind of feels the same, like this might be the one shot we have to go as hard as we can. And when I say hard, that means play shows that make sense and do cool stuff. And if anybody cares, it's enough for me. Like I said, you hear a lot of bands talk about how you just have to march to your own drum. And I get really frustrated with that because I feel like I've been really blessed with having relationship with record labels and booking agents for quite a while. And it's easier for somebody like that to say, just do it, just go do it. But the shows aren't going to happen like that. And if you're not out there doing it and trying to promote yourself a little bit, which is the thing that I'm having a hard time with now, like there'll be days, 2 records have had to come out in the last 4 months. And I've had to stare at my phone more than ever to do these Instagram releases at the right time. And it's a different thing than it used to be. There used to be just like, maybe there was a street team that handed out flyers and you'd show up and there'd be now it's not the same. It's just like so much social media now, which that part of it really makes me just kind of worn down. But then I get together with the guys and then we're back to being like 2001, joking around with the same jokes, so other guys will watch sports and drink beer all day on Sunday, but we'll write songs. So
yeah, that's what we do. And, I hear you on the, just do it, just keep doing it thing, because, now that I've had a taste of the label experience,
mm-hmm.
I would not ever want to go back because you just get so much help. You get so much promotion that it just opens you up to so much more stuff. And I've done it where I'm in a band and I'm just doing things by myself and no one's listening and you don't really get any shows. And then the band just kind of stops. And I don't know. It's not fun.
Right. You can write the best music in the world, but if nobody hears it, I mean, it's great. Your friends will hear it, but that's what those things do at this point. You're not like selling the CDs in the volume that you might have used to, but a label still can give you, if it's the right label, they can get you on a podcast. They could talk to some, they make it so you don't have to do all that stuff on your own. But I don't know. Times are changing so quick. I mean, here we are talking about this, but who knows what'll happen next year if there's another lockdown or something and monkeypox kills us all. I don't know.
Anything can happen these days. And for lack of a better term, I do understand the grind more these days. I used to not put in the effort that you had to or really understand what to do. But, just as far as making material, getting out there, making connections, playing shows, all stuff I'm sure you're very familiar with, like the things you have to do to get to that level, to make those relationships, to get yourself out there.
Now, I will say the weird thing about right now is that the pandemic and COVID kind of, for a moment, sort of leveled the playing field because nobody was playing any shows. And then that kind of made you realize, like, touring isn't really that important anymore. Is somebody going to go out to a show on a Tuesday night when they don't have to, when they can see their band all the time on the internet? Like, they're going to want to go to a show that fits their schedule on a weekend. And so it's not the same model. Like, you used to have to be out there, like you're saying, when you said the grind, it made me think about how, like, you do this slog or this tour that you don't want to do because it might get you to the next tour, which might get you to the next tour, which might pay your rent for that month. what's the goal now? Like to get on MTV that doesn't exist anymore, or to sell all these albums that don't exist anymore? So I don't really know what the model is. And if there's no model, then you don't have to worry about not doing it right.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. What is the goal now?
I don't know, because there are plenty of enormously famous musicians that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You'd have to ask somebody who's half my age, maybe, because I don't know. I heard something like 6 million new Spotify songs come on Spotify every day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go through each of them one by one right now.
I'm here. I'm ready to do it.
And figure out which ones we like and which ones we'll be here all night. I guess the goal in my mind, Peter, is, you tell me what your goal is. The goal in my mind, if I was in a band, it seems to be like you have a social media following of around 150,000, and you can tour in a bus, and like you just have to do 1 or 2 tours a year, and you can live off the band and make like, I don't know, 80 to 100 grand a year. That seems about as far as you can make it in my mind.
I think if you could get there, because don't you have to also, if you're going to be at that level with social media, you probably have your own individual social media that you might have some endorsements that you get paid from and some other stuff like that. But I agree with you that the precision touring, the right touring, and enough people that are paying attention to what you're doing, you could realistically not have another job. I mean, people don't have jobs and they don't even have music. They just put their face and they do dumb shit on the internet, and they get paid way more than I do. But I think if your goal is to have people hear your music, you have to decide what level you're comfortable with, what you think success is. Is success playing a stadium the size of Billie Eilish, or is it like 15 people that know the words to your songs that really care, and there's like 30 people at the gig? For me, it's the latter. I'm lucky enough to have a career doing something else. So the music is something that lets me forget about paying my rent. So we don't have to worry about the money for a gig to play the gig, as long as we don't lose money.
Yeah, I've always had a full-time job because I've had to pay for everything myself. So
Sure.
The music is the escape from that.
Right. And I think that both my bands are like that. Be Well and Fairweather, both. Everybody does really cool stuff, and everybody has lives. And we don't put this in front of our friendships or our families. And again, we're super lucky to be in that position to be able to get this cool weekend show with X band or something, and say that we don't want to do, or turn down a tour. Like when I was younger, I would have never thought to turn down a big tour. But like, maybe my sister's going to have a baby that weekend or whatever. And like, it's not as important to me as being there, being at home for X, Y, and Z. And like I said, I have the luxury of having those priorities. And I think that when you're young, you don't have that luxury, even though when you're young, you have the luxury of not being held down by anything.
Yeah. I mean, when you're young, it's just the band. That's it.
Yeah. And that's why bands implode, because everybody's too young to understand their differences and how to argue with each other. And, Fairweather, we just came back from the beach. We go to the beach every year together for a weekend, just for fun, team building. We get along great, so other bands, maybe that got back together, we never stopped hanging out. That was the difference with Fairweather. We never stopped being friends. We just stopped being in a band together. But other bands will get back together to do a reunion, and they can't stand each other. So how long does that going to last?
Do you know any specific bands that did that you would like to name on the show right now?
I'll hit you on the Slack channel.
Oh, good. Yes. Okay. Some insider info. I love it.
Yeah.
So Be Well has an EP out as well. Hello, Son. This is a great EP as well. I love it. How's that going? How is everything going?
Dude, it's going really well. We couldn't be happier with how everything has gone with Revelation. So that was like another bucket list check for me, was putting a record out on Revelation and Equal Vision in the same 2 months.
Yeah.
The guy that just talks to us about what we need label stuff is Sammy from Judge and Youth of Today. It's insane. But they're a great label, and the band has all these crazy opportunities. And I've played more with Be Well in the past 2 years than I have done music in probably the past 10. And it's really kind of the record's really resonating with people. The Weight and the Cost that came out in, I guess, 2020, people really connected with. And so this EP is like, I want to see a little bit more melodic and a little bit more hardcore in 2 different ways. And so it's kind of like scratches the itch in both ways. And it's given us some real cool opportunities. We've done a bunch of shows with Hot Water Music, and we were out with Avail for the weekend, and we just did a full US with New Found Glory, which was wild because those shows were enormous. But not that Avail shows weren't big, but New Found Glory is crazy because those shows were it was a tour where the other ones were kind of like longer weekends.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know how to wrap my head around it. I couldn't imagine doing that.
How was that tour? Like, were the crowds receptive to you?
I gotta say, I've done some big tours before in my life, and this was the first one. We played first. It was Be Well, then 4 Years Strong, then New Found Glory. It was the New Found Glory Sticks and Stones 20-year anniversary tour. And I got more shows than not were sold out. And when we would go on like 30 minutes after doors, almost everybody was at the show and they would all come up front, which has never happened to me being the opening band on a big show like that. If they don't know your band at a hardcore show, they tend to form a giant horseshoe and not pay attention.
Right.
But they were up there, and maybe they're a little older, I was expecting in my mind New Found Glory fans are all 20. But really they're, between 30 and 40 and 50, I don't know. And they're out for the night to have a good time and see cool music. And we did really well on merch, and people were super receptive, and they all watched. It was wild. It was a much better reaction than I thought. I guess I would say I didn't know what to expect, and it was very humbling. And I think if we were going to do a big tour like that, it would be one to do. Now, it was almost like a little bit, it's hard for us to be gone as long as it was. Like, I only did half of it, and we got to fill in for the other half because I couldn't take off that much time. But we're about to go to, Be Well is going to Europe for 2 weeks in October with Sam I Am, Voice Has Fire, and Hot Water Music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's going to be kind of like, if I can get through that and get that checked off on my bucket list, then you'll see me at the beach with Fairweather for the rest of my life,
Yes.
Super lucky to be able to do that and be asked to do that sort of show at this point. And Voice Has Fire is really big in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
So,
the crowds are unbelievable for them.
Yeah. And Sam I Am, too. Amazing band. So Hot Water, their new record that Brian from Be Well produced, is phenomenal. So, it's going to be October in Europe. I couldn't ask for anything more, really. So
that sounds like a dream come true, honestly.
Yeah. We're doing this. Well, Fairweather's having a record release show in 2 weeks in DC. And our friends Cloak Dagger are playing. They're a band from Richmond, and our other friends, Loud Boys from DC, another punk band from DC, are playing, all really good friends. So we're really
honored. Oh yeah, I've seen Loud Boys before.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I'm in the garage bar that I built with the guitar player from Loud Boys. We built a bar in his garage during our pandemic. That was our project. So
oh, nice. Yeah, they played a gig up here a while ago at St. Vitus. It was Black Clouds when they were around, Loud Boys, and the Jeff Rickley band After Thursday. It's a little heavier. United Nations. Yeah.
Oh, great. That's awesome you saw that show. Yeah, they're a super fun band. So after we do that, Be Well was going to do a show the next weekend in New York City, but that got canceled. But I don't need to go into that. But then the next weekend after that is Furnace Fest. So both bands are going up to Furnace Fest. We're playing the same show, the pre-show to Furnace Fest. And the next weekend, Be Well goes to Europe for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I'm going to need a serious break after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I bet you're gonna feel fully accomplished once it's all done. I mean, you've got 2 great EPs out on 2 different labels. You've got an endless amount of good shows happening, a European tour in the fall. It's all happening. Man, it's all happening right now.
It sounds so awesome when you say it.
Yes,
it is awesome. I'm so thankful for it. When I said I was going to be tired, of course I'm going to be tired because my corpse is going to be tired, but my soul will be enriched. So
you could float on off of this for years. I mean, you just telling me all this, I'm so happy for you. I feel high.
Oh man. I'm looking forward to both bands at Furnace Fest a lot. Europe is going to be this whole other thing, but Be Well, we had such a cool reaction at Furnace Fest last year. And also Furnace Fest is one of the first shows that people had really been to after the pandemic, right? So people in the South never really had a pandemic, but we certainly did up here in DC and in New York. Things were crazy for a while. And so I think a lot of people were just so ready to see music at Furnace Fest in 21. We had a great reaction. It was I think one of the most fun shows we played. So being able to go back there again this year with Be Well, but then also to come back after 21 years with Fairweather to play a real Fairweather set. I couldn't be happier about it. I just have to figure out how many guitars I need to bring to be in different tunings. So,
how many different tunings do you play in?
Be Well plays in one tuning with standard and drop. We play in D standard, and then we do drop from there. Fairweather plays in E flat, and then a couple songs are drop. The older songs are drop from there. It's so similar that the intonation can get fucked up easily in your guitar, and you don't notice it because you're kind of like, your brain will think that you're in the right tuning because you're just a half step off.
Yep.
So I need to have like a separate guitar for each band, so I don't like make my guitar too weird.
Yeah, I was in a band that had 2 different tunings before, so I'd have 2 different guitars, but I was like drunk and messed up most of the time, so that always made things more confusing. Sometimes I couldn't tune right, or I'd be in the wrong tuning. It was a mess.
Yeah, and we write our sets around doing it as little as possible. Like if we're going to do a playthrough, we'll make sure the playthroughs are all in the same tuning, and it's not like we have guys on the side of the stage handing us guitars to change out. So
yeah,
we got to go old school and turn the knob ourselves.
DIY.
Yeah, man, it's very punk.
Well, listen, we're out of time.
Oh.
But listen, Peter, it was great to have you back on the show and in the guest hosting chair. There's a random memory I always think of involving you indirectly.
Okay.
Last year, before you were on the show, it was last year. I was not having a good time last year. It was a tough year for many reasons, and I was just inside a lot. And you were coming on the show, and I was like, listen, I got to get outside. I got to go like sit outside for a little bit. So I went down to this park, and I just listened to all the Fairweather records because I had you coming on the show, and it was just nice to get outside and listen to some good music and forget my troubles for a minute. So I always associate that memory with you now.
That's such a nice thing to hear, man. Thank you so much.
Yes. And you know what? It was great to have you in the guest hosting chair and hear about everything that's going on. So hopefully I'll see you at Furnace Fest this year.
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for having me again, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, I'm back. I am back this week. Bonus episode dropping Thursday. So make sure you tune into that. Talk to you soon. Thanks everybody for listening. And until next time.